Hello and welcome to Provoking Tech. I'm Zach and this is the Cloud Gaming Report, your weekly news source for everything going on in the world of cloud gaming. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to kick off this week's episode on a high note by talking about the improvements and upgrades coming to Shadow in the coming month. So starting on June 1st, Shadow is going to be rolling out their CPU and storage upgrades. In addition, in June, they have some software improvements coming out, such as the USB over network feature, which is going to transfer from the beta-only client to the full public client. So everybody will have access to USB over IP, and I will have a dedicated video on that in the future, so keep an eye out for that. In addition, the software should have some latency improvements. We don't know too much about that, but they are working on decreasing latency with the Shadow application. So moving back to the storage and CPU upgrades real quick, the storage side, we don't know a lot about that. We don't have any benchmarks or anything really that they've made public. There are some comments that it is going to be a pretty impressive upgrade, but we don't really have cold hard facts. So we'll have to wait to see how much that actually impacts our performance in games. On the CPU side, we do have a little bit more to talk about, simply because we do know the CPU that is currently in our Shadow machines, and we do know the CPU that is going to be upgraded too. So currently we have the Xeon E5 2620 V4, and we're going to be upgrading to the Xeon E5 2667 V4. So if you're not a computer hardware nerd, those numbers or models might not have meant anything to you. So I'm going to go ahead and break that down to what this actually means possibly to us, the gamers. So both of these CPUs are 8 cores, 16 threads. So we're not going to see any improvements to the number of cores and threads we'll have access to. But where this is important, or possibly very important, is the improvements to the base and clock, the base clock and the boost clock frequencies. So currently we have a base clock frequency of 2.1 gigahertz and a boost clock of 3.0 gigahertz. In the new CPU, it runs on a base clock frequency of 3.2 gigahertz and a boost clock frequency of 3.6 gigahertz. So the base is having roughly a 50% increase from 2.1 gigahertz to 3.2 gigahertz. And if you cut all those numbers, you'll actually see that the new base clock frequency is actually higher than our previous boost clock frequency. And how long a game could possibly run at the boost clock frequency is going to be somewhat dependent on the cooling solution that Shadow had implemented, but it's very likely that the CPU wasn't running at the full boost clock frequency much of the time. So this is a pretty impressive improvement, and I'm very interested to see what it translates into the world of gaming, and to see how much this actually improves our gaming. Hopefully that means that the CPU won't have any bottleneck on the GPU. Of course, that is going to depend on the performance and the quality settings that you're running at. Of course, if you turn all the quality settings down below, that does make your CPU more likely to be the bottleneck over the GPU, simply because the GPU isn't having to work as hard anymore. So all that said, this should be a pretty good improvement and a pretty impressive upgrade. The cost of the CPUs is roughly 4 times. So it definitely shows some dedication on Shadow to provide a very solid end result to the users. And with the recent price reduction, or to put it more accurately, the removal of contracts from the Shadow pricing, this is all very good news for Shadow, and I'm interested to see where the rest of 2018 takes us with Shadow if the first half of 2018 has been this impressive. Moving on, we have our nearly weekly roundup of games that have been added to GeForce Now, and I do apologize, guys. I did miss a couple of these blog posts that should have been in last week's episode, but I'm surprised I even got an episode at all because I was traveling for work all last week, so things were chaotic. But I do apologize. I missed a couple of games that are added, but we're going to cover those now in case you did miss them. So on GeForce Now, we have several new games added on May 23rd with Dead or Alive 5 Last Round, Far Lone Cells, Mortal Kombat XL, Naruto Shippuden, Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, and I do apologize if I completely butchered that name, Raft, and finally, Welcome to the Game 2. Now going on over to May 25th, we had 3 new games added, technically 4, but I'm going to call them 3 because we had American Truck Simulator 2, we had Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, both the single player and the multiplayer edition of the game, and Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now moving on to games that are actually added this week, we have a single lone game with May 29th having Dark Souls Remastered. There was also a beta update this week that fixed a couple errors. The first of which is simply the wrong error code was displayed when games were patching. And the big error that was fixed this week is on macOS. If you had a 21:9 monitor, it wouldn't actually fill the entire screen. It would go into letterbox mode. So that has been fixed, and it should now correctly display 21:9. And these updates and improvements on the beta side should automatically be installed when you launch your GeForce Now application. To wrap things up, I have a rather disheartening announcement from LiquidSky about their new pricing plans. There's a lot going on in these announcements. It's not just a simple price increase. There's a lot more going on kind of behind the scenes. So there's a lot to talk about here. In fact, it has upset quite a few people in the community, enough so that LiquidSky actually revised their pricing policy. So I will make sure to incorporate those changes as I'm talking about the new pricing plan. There is still a lot here that could be changed for the better though. So after you finish watching or listening to this and you're still dissatisfied with what LiquidSky is doing, please have your voice heard over on LiquidSky. Maybe share this episode with them so they can kind of hear things from other people's viewpoint too, and just have your voice heard, because there is a lot going on in this pricing change, and it's more, as I already said, than just a simple pricing increase. So I'm going to divide this discussion into 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the pay-as-you-go plans and the subscription plans separately, because they are pretty different beasts. So on the pay-as-you-go plan, we're seeing a 50% price increase for the same amount of gameplay credits. So previously you could purchase a gamer or a pay-as-you-go plan for $10, and you might not need to purchase that every month, but you might just have a purchase 1 month, and then you might purchase it twice and then the next month or something, depending on your usage, of course. So previously for $10 you would get 25 hours of gameplay on the gamer tier. Now for $15 you get 25 hours of gameplay on the gamer tier. So for the same amount of gameplay credits, you're seeing a 50% price increase, which is a pretty steep increase. If it went to maybe $12, it'd be a lot more reasonable. And on top of that, it doesn't seem that you can purchase the bulk plans anymore for pay-as-you-go. And those did have a small discount for buying in bulk in terms of the price per credit. So all in all, we're seeing a very steep price increase for people on the pay-as-you-go plan, which is generally people that are a little bit lighter on funds, or maybe just use this as a side gaming rig when they're not, available to play on their main gaming PC. Maybe they're traveling, or maybe you live with your mom and then you have to visit your dad on your weekends, or vice versa. Maybe you have parents that are separated and you only have a gaming station at one of those houses, and you want to play something on the weekends, possibly when you're with your other parent or something along those lines. There's a lot of different use cases why you might not need a ton of credits on a monthly basis, but you do like using the pay-as-you-go plan. And if you are a pay-as-you-go plan user, it is a pretty bad change here with the pricing structure. I mean, a 50% price increase is pretty massive. If you kind of scale it up on the price of a car, if your car suddenly went from $20,000 to $30,000, you're definitely going to balk and walk away from that deal, because that is not a small change at all. So if you view it on a larger scale and from the community as a whole, then it's a pretty massive change. And for people that might be a little bit lighter on funds, or just want to use this as a cheap, low-cost option for when they're away from their gaming PC, this is making LiquidSky less of a viable option, in my opinion. So moving on from that, there is other changes to the pay-as-you-go plan, and the pain does not stop there, guys. So the other change is something that is possibly dishonest, but is outright probably going to be confusing for people that might switch between pay-as-you-go and the monthly subscriptions. So with pay-as-you-go plans, you now burn credits twice as fast as you used to, and twice as fast as subscribers of the monthly or the annual plan. So previously, the gamer tier cost 1 credit per minute, and the pro tier cost 2 credits per minute. That is now 2 credits for the gamer tier per minute, and now 4 credits per minute for the pro tier. So a doubling of the burn rate, but they did also double the sky credits you got, so that your overall burn rate for the amount of dollars you got was the same, but they did also increase the price too by $5. So we did end up seeing a overall 50% price increase. But the burn rate change doesn't make a lot of sense here, especially since the monthly users still utilize the old previous burn rate. And the only thing that I can see here is they're trying to push people towards the monthly plan possibly, because if you do take your credits from the pay-as-you-go to the monthly plan, then those credits, even though you purchased them on pay-as-you-go, they will now enjoy the lower burn rate of the monthly plan. So I'm not sure exactly why they've done all that. It's going to be pretty confusing for people that might switch back and forth between the subscription and the pay-as-you-go. Say maybe you have spikes of usage, maybe for summer break if you're a student and you have more time during the summer to actually game, so you go on the monthly subscription then, and then you go back to school and you go back to the pay-as-you-go, and suddenly you're like, oh man, my credits burn a lot faster again. So just be kind of it's just a confusing change really. In the end, it might be slightly dishonest, but it's very confusing, I think, and I think it's definitely going to confuse users of the community. And the final change for pay-as-you-go is previously, I think, I don't see mention of it anymore because they have revised the policy, but previously I think you had to purchase sky credits every 90 days, otherwise your account would be deleted. Now it is you must consume at least 1 sky credit every 90 days, otherwise your account will be deleted. So if you are a person that uses this kind of on the side, then you will have to keep in mind that you need to log in and spend at least a minute on the server so that your account would not be closed. So that pretty much wraps up all the changes for the pay-as-you-go plans. A lot of bad news there, in my opinion, but we're going to go over to the subscriber side, and it's not all roses and green grass over there either, guys. There's a lot of negative changes there too. So to kick things off, we're going to just kick off with the biggest thing that has upset a lot of people, and that is the subscription plans no longer get rollover credits. And this is pretty disheartening, simply because without rollover credits and without unlimited hours, that was rollover credits kind of made LiquidSky kind of beneficial versus some of the other tiers out there, versus like paying on an hourly basis or going to to service like Shadow, that offers unlimited pricing but at a more expensive price. Actually, if you look deep into this, for the Prestige plan, you're paying only $5 less than what Shadow costs for a hardware that is quite a bit lower power, and you only have a maximum of 100 hours of gameplay on the gamer tier. And if you go to the pro tier, which is the only one that's slightly close to what Shadow has in terms of performance, you're only getting 50 hours. So if you compare the two, this pricing change makes no sense at all, because if you could afford $5 more, it makes so much sense just to make the jump to Shadow, because you have unlimited hours. You're not limited to 50 hours of pro usage. You have unlimited hours, and you're getting a much better computer in the end, especially if the CPU upgrades and the storage upgrades pan out to be nearly as good as people on the Shadow team are saying. You're going to get a much better computer for only $5 a month, and you don't have to worry about how many credits you're using. So the removal of rollover makes the monthly plans even less attractive. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense of why LiquidSky is doing it. So you're seeing a price increase with the monthly plan, and I'll get to the annual plan here in the end, because it's kind of its own little beast here. But the monthly plan, we're going from $20 per month to $30 per month. But we do get a increase to the number of credits that we get. So we get a 50% price increase for the monthly plans, but we do get a 25% increase to the number of credits. So we're going from 80 hours of gameplay on the gamer to 100 hours of gameplay on the gamer. So that's a 25% increase to the number of credits we're getting, but a 50% increase to the price. And like I was saying, with a service like Shadow, with no rollover and $30 per month, LiquidSky doesn't really have a lot of enticement anymore. There's not a lot of reason for you to choose LiquidSky over Shadow, unless that $5 is really that point that's really going to be too much for you to spend on a monthly basis for cloud gaming. So all in all, this is something that makes no sense at all to me. I don't understand why LiquidSky is doing this at all. Very disheartening and frustrating for the community as a whole. I used to view LiquidSky as a decent budget option, but with these price increases, you're honestly much better off going with a service like Paperspace if you don't game as much and playing on one of their hourly plans. The P5000 is definitely going to be on par with what you would get from the pro tier, and usually in most games much better. And the P4000 is definitely going to be light years ahead of the gamer plan in terms of performance. So all in all, you have a couple options there depending on how much you want to play and how many hours you play per month. And then of course, if you are playing on the subscription now at $30 per month, then there's a lot of reasons why you would just make the move to Shadow for $5 more a month. So they're kind of putting themselves in a position where there's not a lot of reasons why you would choose LiquidSky over one of their competitors anymore, because they're no longer really that budget option. But the performance you get from the LiquidSky machines isn't on par from what you get from some of the other services out there on the market. The one big, I guess, draw that they still have is they use IBM as their data centers and as their hardware providers. So IBM is a fairly large cloud provider. They're kind of up there with, they're not as big as Amazon's AWS, of course, but they're up there. They're one of the big ones with Microsoft Azure, the Google Cloud, and so on and so forth. So they have a lot of data centers spread across the world. And so that is one benefit that LiquidSky has, is the fact that they are widespread and they have a lot of choices on where you can actually connect to your data center. And being close to the data center is important for cloud gaming because it does reduce the latency that is induced simply from the distance that your data has to travel. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about the subscriber plan. With the exception of the Prestige Plus plan, this does get you slightly cheaper per month, but you do have to pay on an annual basis. So this is a lump sum of $300 every year. It does get you a little bit more Sky credits. So it's cheaper on a monthly basis if you divide it by 12. And you get an increase to your Sky credits once again by another 20 credits per month. So it's more enticing, but once again, you do have to pay a very large lump sum of $300. And for $300, if you have an older computer, you could buy some pretty good used hardware that's going to be able to get you a very good experience that might be able to compete with what LiquidSky is offering. So once again, it doesn't make a ton of sense unless you are using this kind of as a mobile solution. But $300 and one lump sum is a pretty big ask for somebody that is essentially a console. Even if you wanted to purchase a console, I think the Nintendo Switch is actually like $250. So if you have $300 and you want to buy a gaming setup and you have $300 in one lump sum, if you might end up buying a console versus what LiquidSky is offering here. So to wrap things up, a lot of things simply don't make sense with this pricing change. The pretty big increase for the subscriber plan doesn't make LiquidSky very much as a good choice versus some of the other competition out there on the market. The increase for pay-as-you-go users removes LiquidSky from being a very good budget option or a good option if you use the service very lightly when traveling or possibly when staying with a parent if your parents are separated or something along those lines. So all in all, a lot of negative changes here. Beginner plans have a pretty massive price increase, and it doesn't look like you can no longer buy in bulk. To kind of summarize, the monthly plans have a price increase and no longer have credit rollover, which is I'm very sad to see go. It was the one unique feature of LiquidSky versus some of their competitors out there on the market. So all in all, a lot of negative changes for LiquidSky's pricing structure. I'm hoping they continue to listen to the community and hopefully make some changes further, possibly reinstate rollover. I will say that I understand a little bit from their perspective why they're getting rid of it, because some people have stockpiled credits due to the rollover. But a simple way to get around that is kind of like what phone providers did with rollover back in the day. I don't know if they still do it. With data rollover, I don't pay attention that much anymore because I have an unlimited data plan. But with rollover minutes or rollover data or something along those lines, it only stuck around for a period of time. So say your rollover credits were only good for 90 days. So if you used all your rollover credits that month, you could use some of your, or if you used all your primary credits that month, you could use rollover credits, so you kind of have built up a pool, but those rollover credits might only be good for 90 days. That could be a very strong kind of middle grounds between people that have amassed thousands and thousands of credits due to rollover, and LiquidSky doesn't want all that kind of setting there where someone could just leave their machine on 24/7 for 2 weeks solid. And technically we have paid for those credits, but I kind of see from a business point of view why they're afraid of a lot of people having big bulk storages of rollover credits. But come on, guys, make a middle grounds. Maybe make your rollover credits only good for 60 days. Getting rid of the rollover feature completely is taking away one of the very unique features of LiquidSky, one of the big draws to the subscription plan for LiquidSky, and really honestly makes them not a great option if you compare them with a close inspection against some of the competition out there. So all in all, that's all I have to say on LiquidSky, guys. Please leave some feedback in the description below if you have some thoughts, if you think I'm completely wrong about this. But if you are upset about this too, head over to the LiquidSky forums, possibly share this episode with them, tell them where to start an episode where I actually start talking about LiquidSky, and share your own feedback, guys, because we have to have our voice heard if we have any hope of LiquidSky continuing to make changes. And they did make a small update to the policy changes. They removed the need to purchase Sky credits every so often, and now you just have to burn one Sky credit every 90 days. And so they have made some changes, but there are a lot of changes that I would like to see them continue to make to improve their new pricing structure. And to just kind of summarize and wrap things up around LiquidSky, a pricing increase isn't necessarily bad. I would have preferred to see a much smaller price increase, not a 50% price increase for both the subscriber and the pay-as-you-go. Maybe a 20% price increase would have been a lot easier for us to chew up and deal with. But all the other things going on here, guys, is going to be really hurtful for LiquidSky. And there have been other issues with LiquidSky for about a year now. We haven't seen a lot of improvements on. They did release a new streamer, but it also has a lot of issues. I was working on looking into that, so I might have a video on that in the near future too, guys, about the new streamer. And maybe they are starting to make more progress about fixing some issues that have been around for a year now. But with pricing increases and on top of the issues that LiquidSky has been having with their streamer, performance issues and things along those lines, it's not really making LiquidSky a great option for cloud gaming. And that's really sad to say, because LiquidSky is what got me into cloud gaming, and I've been using it for almost 2 years now, because I have been using it longer than I've been making videos on YouTube. I don't know exactly when I started, but LiquidSky is what got me into cloud gaming. So it's sad to see that the service has really gone downhill from what it was back in the LiquidSky 1.0 days to what it is now. So guys, if you like this episode, please give it a like, a heart, a follow, a subscribe, whatever the choice of action is for your podcast app of choice, whether that be watching on YouTube or listening on Podbean or Fireside or one of the other applications that I'm on. I am continuing to roll out the podcast to more and more services out there. So keep your eye out if you watch this on YouTube, for instance, but you do listen to podcasts on another app, that Cloud Gaming Report might show up there in the near future. So once again, guys, thanks for watching or listening. And until next time, Zach out.